people within the organization, whether it be on your staff, in your locker room, or just employed by the club, have come out and expressed their support for Bruce Arena. How have you viewed these, and how does that kind of, I guess, make you feel, or any emotions that come with that?
As Adam stated, I can't get into any further details. Any questions regarding the investigation, I have to refer to the league.
Richie Williams there at a press conference on Tuesday, at which time he was the interim manager of the New England Revs in the wake of Bruce Arena's resignation amidst an MLS investigation into inappropriate and insensitive remarks made by the iconic manager. Things changed quickly. Clint Piet, who like Williams played for Bruce Arena at DC United and the University of Virginia, has now been named interim manager. Meanwhile, The Athletic reporting that Revolution players refused to train under Williams after Arena resigned. The Revolution right now sits second in the Eastern Conference with 7 games left in their regular season. For more on this story, thrilled to welcome into the show Pablo Maurer of The Athletic. He, along with Tom Bogert, have been at the fore reporting this story. Pablo, great to have you with us. First things first, your backdrop is always something to be discussed. Where are you right now?
I'm in the archives at the National Soccer Hall of Fame. Take a look at this right here. Look what they did to my boy.
What a
Look
moment.
What they did to my boy.
And you've Herculez gear back there.
That's right.
Yeah, I got a couple Galaxy things up this shoulder, I guess. Yeah,
There you go.
There you go. There you go.
All right, Pablo, so let's try our best to dive into this story. I mean, as best as you can explain from the top, what happened here with the New England Revolution, Bruce Arena, and Richie Williams?
You want me to go all the way back to the beginning here?
Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bruce Arena obviously was placed on leave. The league investigated him for what they said were, I believe their phrasing was inappropriate and insensitive comments. They installed Richie Williams, Bruce's longtime assistant, as the interim head coach for the Revolution. About a month later, Tom Bogert, my colleague, really several other people around the industry have sort of been digging around and poking around, came out with a report that suggested that at least some of the complaints that investigation was addressing involved Richie Williams as assistant coach. So, all that reporting obviously came out, and very quickly it created a very awkward situation, is what I would say, in the locker room. Players obviously made their concerns known to Brian Bolillo and Kernan Alfo, and other people at the Revs, ownership, etc. And it seems to have come to a head a couple of days ago with Richie Williams being, reassigned within the organization, whatever the verbiage they're using is. It's been a lot. There's been a lot, sadly, that's happened at the New England Revolution in the past month.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious, is there any way you can tell us more about the relationship of Bruce Arena and Richie Williams, and maybe also Richie Williams and the rest of Bruce Arena's coaching staff? Because per reports, it seemed like it got pretty tense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Richie and Bruce have a decades-long history that dates back to the University of Virginia. Richie played for him, obviously, at DC United. They've coached together, multiple MLS teams, with the national team, etc. They have a very long history, which is what makes this situation so interesting, obviously. As far as the rest of the staff goes, there did seem to be sort of a schism developing between Shari Joseph and Dave Vandenberg, two of Bruce's assistants, and Richie. That is not something new. Richie and Shari, there were sort of multiple altercations between them last year, physical altercations even. The Revolution, things haven't been peaceful per se, for a long time. This is obviously coming to a head here in the past week, but the cracks of all this have sort of been showing for over a year, honestly.
I want you, Pablo, because I know a lot of people who are watching this show may have read the article or the articles that you and Tom have put out, but maybe not everybody. If you could set the scene and take us inside the players' meeting for the New England Revolution when they're meeting with management, because that seems like a real inflection point in terms of how the Revs, at least, were handling this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think players, I don't speak for the Revolution's players, obviously, but based on my reporting, they seem very frustrated with the fact that they were sort of kept out of the loop in terms of what specifically was being investigated, who was involved in the investigation. Look, I mean, I think it's a perfectly normal thing, obviously, as an HR complaint, it's a league investigation. There's really only so much that, it would be like if I worked at a company and somebody else filed a complaint at the company and I expected to sort of be looped in on it. But, it's a locker room. It's obviously, you read this stuff in the media, you see stuff being reported. You don't know what's true. You don't know if your coach or coaches are lying to you. I mean, it became a mess. So obviously it came to a head with, the Revs players essentially were convened last minute a couple of days ago in the morning to meet with Brian Bolillo. They didn't get much more information out of that hour-long meeting. So then they demanded to speak with basically the entire coaching staff. They didn't get much more information out of that meeting. Williams was asked whether he was involved. He basically said that he couldn't say, he couldn't speak about the investigation. Again, I suspect that many of these people are just bound by league guidelines, club guidelines, legalities. There's obviously lawyers involved here. So I don't want to say I feel for Richie Williams or Cardinalfo, et cetera, but it must be an interesting thing to have players asking these questions, the press reporting things, and whether it's true or not, you're not even able to comment on it. I mean, it's not an enviable position. So obviously after all that, the players said, look, we're not going to train today. I think it's funny that's sort of been walked back in recent days. You have players saying that they didn't refuse to train. I do suspect it was a situation where they essentially told Richie Williams and Cardinalfo, we're not training today. Those two guys, I'm speculating at this point, may have said, okay, sure, that's fine. That's not really a mutual decision, But yeah, I mean, that gets us up to speed. The players seem to have closed ranks at this point, understandably. And it's certainly a good thing as far as the prospects the rest of the year. But man, I'm even having trouble keeping track of this at this point. It's just been a lot.
Pablo, what about Bruce Arena here? I mean, does he come back from this, or is it over for Bruce Arena in Major League Soccer?
It's an interesting question, man. I mean, I think the big what if right now is what did Bruce say, right? I mean, we've all heard things, nothing that I could get to the point where it's reportable. Bruce has, a tremendous legacy, a huge network of coaches, former players who, speak about his character. And look, he's always been a guy who, as Jeff said last night on ESPN FC, like he's really the last players coach in the league, right? Players tend to love him. On the other hand, he has this entirely other side where he is like 72-year-old dude from the Bronx who, sort of speaks his mind, honestly, probably says things that in the year 2023 we don't say anymore. So I have no idea. I mean, I don't think it really touches his legacy on the field. I mean, those results speak for themselves. He's, for me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the greatest professional men's coach in American history. I did think it was interesting. Obviously, you saw in the league statement that if he does want to work in MLS again, he's going to have to apply for reinstatement, which was, that raised my eyebrows, I have to say. But I don't know. I mean, it's also up to Bruce the guy's 71, 72 years old. Does he want to come back and coach again? I mean, most people at that age are sort of packing it in to begin with, so there's a lot of what ifs at this point.
Pablo, I got to ask you, where does this leave the New England Revolution? Obviously, with the rest of this season, they're second place in the Eastern Conference. They've had a pretty good season to this point, but I'm thinking kind of long-term here, because when we hear these press conferences with Cardinalfo and Brian Bolillo, they sound like guys who are in the last days of a contract. They don't sound like guys who are thinking kind of long-term vision here. And I guess, Pablo, what the great shame of this all is that New England, since hiring Bruce Arena, had really seemed to turn a corner, not just on-field results, but some of the transfer moves. The Revolution really seemed to be heading in the right direction. Now it seems like they got to, clean house in the front office before next year.
Yeah, it's hard to say, honestly, man. I mean, you are right, though. The club has made progress. Their academy all of a sudden is producing, I shouldn't say all of a sudden, in the past couple of years now has been producing decent players. Obviously, like you said, they're making, club record outgoing transfers, that sort of stuff. I'm really interested to see how this plays out, not just in the front office, but in the remaining games. I am of the mind that this may galvanize them. They are an incredibly talented team. They have very, very good players. Based on what you saw out of, the media availabilities today and yesterday, like I said, players seem to have sort of, talked amongst themselves and decided to close ranks and really stay focused. And these sort of things, I don't know, they have a way of galvanizing teams sometimes. On the other hand, then if they go out to Colorado this weekend and just lose, especially if they lose in the way that they've lost games recently, in the last 5 minutes of the match or something like that, it could come even more unraveled very quickly, right? As far as Adolfo, Brian Bolello, Brian Bolello has been at the club for over 2 decades, has an excellent relationship by all accounts, I think, with ownership. I don't know what the future holds for either of those two guys. Kurt's another guy that obviously has been around the league a lot. We'll sort of have to wait and see. I do understand where you're coming from, Sebi. It very much feels like a situation where they'd almost want to just blow the entire ship up and start from scratch. But who knows? I'm not Jonathan or Robert Kraft. I'm a lot more poor, for one thing.
You wish you had their bank accounts.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
All right, there he is, Pablo Maurer of The Athletic. Pablo, man, great to have you here with us on Futbol Americas. Safe travels there from North Carolina, and we'll hope to see you soon here on the show.
Yeah, man, I'm pretty sure this place is haunted, by the way. I'm like the last place in this building. It's 9 p.m. and the lights keep going on and off, and I don't know. You know where to find my body.
There you go. Hey, not a bad place to be haunted and trapped in. The spot where all the history in American soccer is preserved. Pablo, great stuff. Thanks as always, and we'll see you soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.